Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to break down how we can transform a concept that's, let's be honest, often pretty intimidating, the idea of rebuke, into a restorative tool for real healing and unity. I mean, we've all been there, right? Situations where communication just completely breaks down, feelings get hurt, and our words end up becoming weapons. But today, we're drawing from some really rich theological and philosophical sources to explore how true biblical correction can actually heal our relationships rather than fracture them.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for today. We'll be looking at 1. The power of words. 2. Reframing true biblical correction. 3. Examining your own heart. 4. Speaking truth in love. And 5. Winning hearts, not arguments.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the power of words. We're looking at the dual nature and the really destructive potential of our language.
You know, the biblical book of James warns us that a tiny spark can set a whole forest on fire. It's a perfect analogy, really, for the terrifyingly destructive potential of human language. And this danger is brilliantly illustrated by what the philosopher Simone Weil called empty words. Back in a 1937 essay, she pointed out how abstract terms, think of words like nation or capitalism or democracy, are so often used as hostile slogans. Historically, these words kind of lose their concrete meaning and just fuel division. They become these banners under which people are literally willing to shed blood, sometimes without even grasping what they're fighting for. So as communicators and believers, we have to impartially observe this human tendency to flatten complex debates into absolute, essentialized camps. We absolutely must avoid using our own spiritual or theological words as empty weapons of division.
To combat this destructive tendency, Pastor Simon Manchester points out the biblical contrast between what are essentially two totally different operating systems. On one side, you have worldly wisdom. This is driven by selfishness, pride, earthly desires, and it inevitably breeds disorder and division. But on the flip side, we see heavenly wisdom. This is wisdom from above, it's peace-loving, it's pure, and it's submissive. It sows a harvest of righteousness. The contrast is super stark here. We simply cannot achieve heavenly results if we're relying on worldly, divisive communication tactics.
Moving right along to Section 2. Reframing true biblical correction. This is about shifting correction from a weapon of pride to a vital tool for healing.
So, the crucial point we need to make here is redefining the word rebuke. In modern, everyday terms, rebuking sounds really harsh, doesn't it? Kind of like a scolding. But biblically speaking, it is never, and I mean never, about winning an argument, asserting your own opinion, or trying to flex some sort of power over someone else. It's solely about restoring a fellow believer's spiritual health. The Apostle Paul instructed in 1 Corinthians that addressing sin is done so that a person's spirit may be saved. Think of it like a rescue mission, definitely not a search and destroy mission. If a rebuke is delivered just to make you feel spiritually superior, well, it's stopped being righteous correction and has basically just become pride.
Pastor John Piper unpacks that famous phrase from Ephesians 4, speaking the truth in love. He really emphasizes that this isn't just some mandate to be sensitive or polite. Actually, it means being truth agents. God gives the church, apostles, prophets, evangelists, and pastors to equip us, right? So that we can all be agents who use the truth of the gospel to build corporate unity and protect each other from just being blown all over the place by false doctrines. True love simply cannot keep the truth to itself, especially when that truth is exactly what a brother or sister needs to hear to stay spiritually stable.
Which brings us to Section 3, examine your own heart. This is that absolutely vital first step of internal preparation.
Author Mark Allen Williams provides this fascinating step-by-step guide to correction that acts as a necessary filter for our words. We have to start with the absolute necessity of examining ourselves first. Then we ensure our guidance is actually biblical. And finally, we verify that our end goal is correct. Because if we skip these steps, our correction is pretty much guaranteed to do more harm than good. Let's actually look a bit closer at step 1.
Jesus was remarkably clear about this in Matthew chapter 7. He said, "First take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye." We have got to check our own motives and our own sins first. And why is that? Well, because human nature is incredibly ironic. Often, the very things that deeply irritate us about someone else's behavior are actually just reflections of our own underlying flaws. We must approach correction with deep humility, making totally sure we genuinely want to help, rather than just lashing out because of our own unaddressed baggage.
All right, Section 4, speaking truth in love. We're looking at the both-and approach to external delivery.
The way we actually deliver the message matters immensely. We need to adopt a both-and approach, really emulating Jesus here. Jesus could be fiercely bold in truth, like think about him flipping tables in the temple against religious hypocrisy, but at the exact same time, he invited the heavy-laden to find rest in his profound gentleness. A true biblical rebuke embodies these characteristics. It's gentle, sober-minded, and self-controlled. It is never quarrelsome, violent, condescending, or demeaning. You can be incredibly firm on biblical doctrine while remaining wonderfully gracious in your character.
And this distinction is just huge. We must clearly separate biblical correction from our own personal bias. Mark Williams notes our guidance has to be backed by clear scripture, which 1 Timothy 3 says is profitable for teaching and reproof. We have got to avoid pushing our own personal preferences under the guise of biblical correction. I mean, if you just have a personal opinion on how someone should do something, hey, that's fine, but label it as personal advice. Let them take it or leave it. We only speak with that bold, loving authority when the scripture itself is absolutely clear on the issue.
Furthermore, the context and the tone of our delivery require really careful consideration. We have to distinguish between genuine passion and destructive abrasiveness. Passion is zealous communication aimed at restoration. Abrasiveness, on the other hand, is a harsh delivery that ultimately just becomes a stumbling block. If our delivery mocks the other person or is unnecessarily aggressive, it completely loses its power to restore, no matter how factually true your words might be. It just becomes noise that shuts the other person down.
Finally, Section 5. Winning hearts, not arguments. This is the ultimate goal of resolution.
History gives us some absolutely beautiful examples of what successful correction looks like in practice. Over in the book of Acts, we see this husband and wife ministry team, Priscilla and Aquila. They pulled aside a really powerful speaker named Apollos, who had an incomplete understanding of the gospel. And because of their gentle, loving instruction, Apollos gladly received their correction. Similarly, the Apostle Paul met some disciples of John the Baptist who hadn't even heard of Jesus. Paul lovingly instructed them, and they eagerly became followers of Jesus without any sort of quarrel. In both of these cases, the gentle approach resulted in the truth being graciously and gladly received.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a real thought provoker to examine the next time you feel that undeniable urge to correct someone. Ask yourself, are you just trying to win the argument? To prove that you're right and they're wrong? Or are you genuinely trying to win over a brother or sister? True biblical correction sacrifices the fleeting pride of winning an argument for the eternal joy of winning a heart and healing a relationship. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this framework radically transforms the way we all communicate truth in love.